Name Amida Buddha. Elements of genuine faith. 7. To say the name of Amida Buddha. When one has faith or Shinran, one is convinced that Amida Buddha and his Pure Land exist, and that the promise he made in his Primal Vow is true. So he simply entrusts to this Buddha and wishes to go to his Pure Land, or Buddha field of Amida, after death. Saying Namo Amida Buddha often or seldom means exactly this. I entrust to Amida Buddha, I take refuge in Amida Buddha, and I wish to go to his Pure Land. It also means, thank you Amida Buddha for saving me and taking me to your Pure Land at the end of this physical body. The genuine saying of Amida's name comes naturally after entrusting to him. Thus, the Nembutsu is both an expression of faith and gratitude that you are saved as you are by Amida Buddha. Shinran Shonin said, quote, although the one moment of Shinran and the one moment of Nembutsu are two, there is no Nembutsu separate from Shinran or faith, nor is the one moment of Shinran separate from the one moment of Nembutsu. End quote. Quote, Amida vowed to take into the land of bliss those who say the name, and thus to entrust oneself deeply and say the name is to be in perfect accord with the primal vow. Though a person may have Shinran, if he or she does not say the name, it is of no avail. And conversely, even though a person fervently says the name, if that person's Shinran is shallow, he cannot attain birth. Thus, it is the person who both deeply entrusts himself to birth through the Nembutsu and undertakes to say the name who is certain to be born in the true fulfilled land. End quote. Rennyo Shonin also said, quote, Namo means to take refuge in. It means to entrust yourself to Amida with the assurance of your salvation. End quote. Next, what is the meaning of say my name perhaps even 10 times from the Primal Vow? Shinran Shonin explained, quote, in the Primal Vow are the words saying my name perhaps even 10 times. Know from the words 10 times that appear from the beginning in the vow itself that saying the name is not limited to one utterance, and the word perhaps even makes it clearer still that there is no set number of times one should say the name. Saying my name perhaps even 10 times, in encouraging us to say the name that embodies the vow, the Tathagata added perhaps even to the words 10 times to show that there is no set number of times the name must be said, and to teach sentient beings that there is no determined hour or occasion for saying it. Since we have been given this vow by the Tathagata, we can take any occasion in daily life for saying the name, and need not wait to recite it at the very end of life. End quote. As I explained at the beginning of this subchapter, one who is sincerely in love will say, I love you, often or seldom, and wish to be with the person he loves. Similarly, a person who sincerely entrusts to Amida Buddha will express this faith by saying his name and wish to be born in his Pure Land. How often or seldom one says, I love you to the person he loves is of no importance as long as love is there in his heart. In the same way, any number of Nembutsu is equally good as long as genuine faith in Amida is present. We should not be obsessed with the numbers of recitations, but simply entrust to Amida Buddha for our birth in his enlightened realm, and enjoy the Nembutsu in a relaxed way. Let us hear the clarifications of our masters on this topic. Quote, neither those who say the name more than 10 times, nor those who only hear the name are omitted or excluded from birth in the Pure Land. End quote. Quote, question, which is superior in merit, a mere single utterance of Nembutsu or 10 repetitions of Nembutsu? Answer, they have the same merit with regard to birth in the Pure Land. The number of recitations is not the issue. The merit of birth in the Pure Land is equal, as is clearly stated in the Primal Vow. How can there be any doubt? You state that with one utterance of the Nembutsu the cause of birth is fulfilled. It is truly so. Even so, however, It does not mean that a person should not say the Nembutsu beyond the one utterance. This matter is explained fully in Essentials of Faith Alone. Please read this work carefully. I have been taught that since it is the primal vow of birth through the Nembutsu, whether one says the Nembutsu many times or whether one says it only once, one will be born. It must never be taught that one will certainly attain birth with only one utterance, but will not attain birth if one says it many times. Please carefully read Essentials of Faith Alone." End quote. In the Essentials of Faith Alone it is said, quote, "Some falsely say the essence of the path to birth in the Pure Land is a trusting mind. Once this mind of trust has become settled, it is not always necessary to recite the Nembutsu. The sutra teaches, say it even once, hence one utterance is understood to be sufficient. When one seeks to accumulate many utterances, it is, on the contrary, a failure to trust in the Buddha's vow. Thus they greatly mock and gravely slander those who recite the Nembutsu, saying that they are people who do not truly believe in the Nembutsu. These people, adhering to the doctrine of one's calling, they stop saying the Nembutsu. This is the means the demons have used to deceive the sentient beings of this latter age. In such explanations, there are both good and bad points. In principle, the statement that one utterance suffices as the act for birth in the Pure Land is perfectly true. Nevertheless, it is going too far to say that the accumulation of a large number of utterances shows the lack of a trusting mind. It does show, however, a lack of a trusting mind if one believes that one utterance is insufficient and birth requires accumulating a great number of utterances. Master Shan-tao stated that as long as one is alive, one should constantly say the Nembutsu. Are we to say such people lack trust? To dismiss them with ridicule would be wrong. One utterance actually appears in a passage of the sutra. Not to believe it is not to believe the Buddha's word. Thus one should believe in the settling of birth with one utterance, and further, continue saying the name without negligence throughout one's life. This is the true meaning of the teaching." End quote. In the clarification of one's calling and many calling by Master Ryoken, it is said, quote, "These days the practice of the Nembutsu is being entangled in vigorous debate over the doctrines of one's calling and many calling. This debate touches on matters of crucial importance and demands that we exercise great care. Both the advocacy of a position of one's calling that rejects many callings and the advocacy of many calling and denunciation of one calling run counter to the essential meaning of the primal vow and fail to take into account the teaching of Shan-tao. Many calling is nothing but the accumulation of single callings, for human life is such that a person should consider each day that this may be his last, each minute that this may be the end. From the very moment of our birth, this realm of impermanence is merely a fleeting and temporary dwelling. Our lives may be compared to a lantern flame before the wind, or likened to dew upon a blade of grass, and there is no escape anywhere for even a single person, whether wise or foolish, from the extinction of breath and the draining away of life. If our eyes may close forever, even in this present instant, then we say Name Of Amida Buddha, aspiring to be saved by Amida's primal vow and welcomed into the pure land of perfect bliss, based on our trust in the supreme virtues embodied in a single calling and our reliance on the great and vast benefit of that one calling. As life continues, this single calling becomes 2 or 3 callings. They accumulate so that one moment becomes an hour, then 2 hours, a day or 2, a month, a year, 2 years, 10 or 20 years, 80 years. The immutable nature of our existence is expressed truly in the statement that we should wonder how it is that we are still alive today, and whether this very instant will be our last in this world. If a person maintains that many calling is necessary, even though there is no many calling separate from one's calling, nor any one's calling apart from many calling, then surely he is a greater enemy of the Pure Land teaching than those who simply ignore passages of the larger sutra of immeasurable life, such as the one that teaches, quote, "If a person thinks on that Buddha even once, he will attain birth." End quote. or the one that declares beyond doubt, quote, if there are persons who, having heard the name of that Buddha, leap and dance with joy and say it even once, know that they receive the great benefit, that is, they acquire the unexcelled virtues, end quote. Or also those of Master Shan-tao too, who, in accordance with the attentions of the sutra, determined, quote, saying the name even once in joy, all attain birth, with 10 voicings or 1 voicing, a single utterance, all decisively attain birth, end quote. If, however, because of belief in this, you adhere single-mindedly to the position of birth through once calling, and declare that many calling is erroneous, then do you intend to overlook the words of the Primal Vow, saying the name perhaps even 10 times, and ultimately take the teaching of the saying of the name for 1 to 7 days in the smaller sutra to be pointless? And further, one truly knows now, without so much as a single thought of doubt, that Amida's universal primal vow decisively enables all to attain birth, including those who say the name even 10 times, or even but hear it. These passages teach beyond all doubt that there should be no controversy over the positions of one's calling and many calling. The person who has simply entrusted himself to Amida's vow should continue to say the Nembutsu until the end of his life, with birth in the Pure Land as his goal. You must not cling to one or the other extreme. I've been unable to express my innermost thoughts as I would like. Still, I hope the reader will be able to grasp my meaning through these notes. Those who adhere to once calling, as well as those who cling tenaciously to many calling, invariably meet with inauspicious death, for both deviate from the meaning of the primal vow. Consider this carefully. It cannot be said too often that you must avoid confusing the truth that many calling is itself once calling, and that once calling is many calling. End quote. Simply stated, debates over once calling or many callings of the name are stupid and dangerous for one's karma, as we have seen in the above. Both attitudes show a lack of genuine faith and understanding of the primal vow. Shinran Shonin also advised us to stay away from them. Quote, in the capital also there seems to be much arguing over such matters as once calling and many calling. This should never take place at all. In such disputation over once calling and many calling, merely futile and argumentative words are voiced. You should by all means avoid it. People who do not understand these matters discuss things of little significance. You should avoid such arguments by all means. End quote. Quote, the dispute over once calling and many callings is pointless. The tradition of the true Pure Land teaching speaks of birth through the Nembutsu. Never has there been mention of birth through once calling or birth through many calling. Please understand this. End quote. Name of Amida Buddha.